our story now, you have Jake, Yaakov, and Rachel. Ring a bell? Famous biblical match made in heaven. Jake and Rachel. The Shadchan, the matchmaker, says, I found the perfect girl, and of course, I found the perfect boy. And they perfect for each other. They meet, and it goes amazing. It's like all the checks are checked, double checks, perfect for each other, right? They love at first sight. They're in love. They agree with everything. They get along, and they're dreaming about this absolute dream life that they're going to live after forever, live happily ever after forever, and they get married. And month goes by, 2 months go by, and things begin to deteriorate. Why? Because they're getting to know a Rachel and a Jake that they didn't think existed, because they only saw, even in that sense, superficially. And so Jake turns out not to be the perfect husband, perfect man that's ever sensitive and ever concerned about every little detail of his wife. And Rachel is also not the perfect wife that's ever sensitive and ever careful and concerned about every single detail of Jacob's life 24 hours a day. And so they're both realizing that there's a selfish side to each of them. This relationship gets worse and worse and worse and worse until things break down and they're fighting. And I'm going to make the story short, but you can imagine this could be a nice, one of these nice, not so love movies, because they're really starting to hate each other. Things continue to get worse, and they reach the point of counseling, marriage counsels. Then that's not working, and finally, about a year after they got married, which is a very short time, they're sitting in the Jewish court where Jewish couples go to get divorced, and they're sitting there. They've gone through the divorce process, which is also difficult, another couple of months, and they're sitting there a year after their wedding day, roughly, and they're about to get divorced. And on the way to this final meeting that they're going to, again, make their claims and statements, and the court's going to help them come up with a peaceful solution where they're going to go their separate ways. They're sitting there, and their minds are wandering. Jake is wondering, how did I get here? This was such a perfect girl, and he's remembering and thinking about those moments where she was so beautiful and so perfect in his eyes. And of course, Rachel's thinking about the same thing. How did I get here? Only a year ago, I thought I found my dream, everything I prayed for. And how do we get here? And they're both in this confused state. They look at each other once or twice or three times. Finally, one of them has the courage to just call out the other person's name, Rachel or Jake. And in one word, these walls that have been separating them and causing them to get divorced, a couple of them are shattered. And they make eye contact. And the rabbi in charge of the divorce notices that they somehow are trying to connect, and he calls for a recess, and they're out there in the lobby with some time on their hands, and the conversation starts. Everything's very cautious because they went through a very rough year. But they decide, let's pause this divorce, and let's try to sit down and talk over a cup of coffee. Once or twice, 3 times this happens, and they begin to rebuild a connection, not out of dreams of this perfect person, but after knowing that this is not the perfect person. There's a lot of flaws in this person, and in both ways. They're both recognizing there's a lot of problems that he has and a lot of problems that she has. And despite all that, they begin a decision to accept each other the way they are and to rebuild. That final marriage that they're going to have when they put it all together and live, again, will really be a happily ever after life, because it will be knowing what they're getting, and it'll be after working through all the problems to bring back a peace and a love and an appreciation and a respect that's greater than what they were dreaming about. Because reality is always going to top this dream fantasy life that you think you're going to have. And they're going to have a real marriage, real love, real commitment, real devotion, and they will live happily ever after. But it came through difficult beginnings. And that difficult beginnings don't mean it's hopeless. Difficult beginnings mean work is involved. There's a beautiful story that brings this point out powerfully. I saw it in one of these picture memes, but very pointed and very, very deep. It's or either it was a short video or a picture, just giving the message over, was this. A couple, a very, very, very old couple in their 90s, still married. They're asked, what is the secret to your success? How did you manage to stay in love and to continue to want to give love to each other so long? 90 years old and you're still married and still in love. And the answer was, we grew up in a time and place where when something was broken, you didn't just throw it away, you fixed it. And that's the definition of real love, real commitment, real life, and real marriage, is when things are don't fit exactly the way you thought they would fit. The circle's not getting into the circle. It's just like trying to get a bit of a square into a circle. You can either say this game is broken and move on and create another broken game, or you can work to fix. And when we first of all work to fix in ourselves, realizing that the problems in my life are not coming from everyone around me. There might be problems around me, but all the problems in my life start with me and end with me. When we realize and take responsibility on ourselves, and not look to the other to blame and then say, I'm the righteous and they're the bad person and it's all their fault. No, it's my fault. If I have sadness, if I have discord in my life, I have to know it's my life and I'm responsible to fix my life. And when we look to ourselves first for the fixing, most often we'll find out that we have a lot to fix, and it's not always, and certainly not only the other person's fault. And if both people in the relationship do the same, then you can live happily ever after. With this, I hope was a slightly beautiful, slightly emotional story. I kind of stripped it from all its emotion, but the point was to get the lesson out. We can now look at Purim, the holiday of Purim, and see what Purim is really about, and how we can really maximize our Purim and our reconnect with Hashem. So the question is brought, how come Purim is such a great holiday? On Purim, the Jews were in the worst situation you can imagine. They were on the lowest level one can imagine. Which is not the case when the Jews left Egypt. When the Jews left Egypt, they were on the highest of highs. They saw miracles. They saw and felt God's love. They had a love for God, and their devotion was tremendous. As the prophets tell us, that the Jewish people followed God into the desert like a bridegroom, like the love between bride and groom. We were madly in love with Hashem, and Hashem was in love with us, and we were swept off our feet, so to speak, by God Himself with these miracles. And He says, I only want you. And He took us into the desert to be intimate. An intimate union and relationship was built between us and Hashem when we left Egypt. One of the most beautiful relationships that can exist. And King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, discusses this beautiful relationship in his holy writing, Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. And that's what our life is. And that's what the life experience is of the Jewish people with Hashem, their God. It's this Song of Songs, the Holy of Holies. It's this love song between husband and wife and husband. It works both ways. And that is what we had when we left Egypt. And that's what God promised and wanted from us, for us, and vice versa. We also wanted that with Hashem. But it wasn't just a happy story, because eventually we betrayed Hashem and we weren't loyal, and He became upset, angry, like any relationship, and we were banished. We were sent away from our home. We were in exile, in the Persian exile, which is the Purim story. And we hit rock bottom. And there was a decree that we will all be killed, all of us, every man, woman, and child killed, which represents the end of this relationship, the destruction of this home that we were trying to build. And we had an option. Actually, to save our physical lives by saying, okay, we'll give up on this religion. We'd give up on being Jewish. Had we have given up on being Jewish, then there would be no decree on our heads. We could have just said, we're done. Hashem's not taking care of us. God disappeared. We're in trouble and He's not helping us. So we're not going to be with Him either, and we're going to just help ourselves. And it's an end to this relationship. We'll survive on our own and we'll stop being Jewish. That was an option. And if they'd have done that, they just would have been able to live as non-Jews, become Persian, and live happily ever after, at least with their lives. But the Jews did not choose that. They said, we're Hashem's people, and we will give up our lives if that's what's necessary. And Hashem, it's interesting, in this particular story and the way this miracle developed, was specifically hiding. He never left us. He never left the Jewish people. He was only hiding to see who and what we really were and what we were really made of, to see if we were really His people and really devoted to Him above all. And it's when the squeeze came, when that difficult moment came, when the easiest solution was to destroy it, to end it, to burn the house down and go make a new one. We said, no. This is who we are. This is what we are. We're Hashem's people. And even if Hashem has disappeared, we will not stop believing in Hashem, and we will not stop serving Hashem, and we will not stop loving Hashem, even if it means they'll take our lives. And they were facing a decree that would have taken all of their lives. And through that year of sacrifice and commitment to Hashem, we proved ourselves to be Hashem's people, Hashem's children. And Hashem said, my children, my people, no one can touch. And he did not only save us from annihilation, he saved every single one of us from annihilation. The miracle of Purim, which makes it greater than any other miracle, than any other story in the history of creation, is in the war that we fought against all of our enemies, Amalek and all of the Jew haters, which we can see how many are still out there today. They hide, they go to sleep, but they wake up. They wake up with hate, full of hate, and that's what we're seeing today. The Amaleks of the world hating us because we're alive and because we're here. And that's what the Jews of Purim faced. This evil that came to destroy us, annihilate us. 100%, Hashem said, these are my children, and you cannot have one of them. And in the war we fought against enemies that were stronger than us, more numerous than us, better armed and better trained in how to kill. So in that fight, the Megillah, the book of Esther, shows us exactly how many people died of our enemies. And it doesn't mention how many people died of the Jewish people. It doesn't mention how many of the Jews died. But in one verse, it shows us, it hints to us how many Jews died. It says in that battle, Hashem made an unbelievable hidden miracle, because it was us that had to hold up the sword, the knife, the stick. It was us that had to defend ourselves, seemingly with God nowhere to be found. And it was all up to us. But Hashem was hiding, and it was present even then, and he made a hidden miracle in that 0 Jews died. Imagine a hand-to-hand combat fight in the way that they fought thousands of years ago, where there was always casualties, always. It was impossible to have a war without a casualty. It was impossible. Almost impossible. When Hashem is making hidden miracles, so the impossible becomes possible, and not one Jew died in the war against our enemies. And Hashem sent a very strong message. My children, my wife, because there's another relationship that we are Hashem's wife, no one can touch. And he said to Haman, the evil Haman, and Amalek, and that evil energy that is right now on fire, that wants Jewish blood, that wants to disgrace Jews, that wants to demonize Jews. In the end, what Hashem's going to tell them all, and we have to hold on to Hashem no matter what, is you can't have one of my children. They're all my children. They're all mine. And they'll be mine forever. And the root of this entire struggle that we're facing now is an inner struggle between us and Hashem. The external hate for us is a side story. It has nothing to do with the real story. The real story is, are we for Hashem? Or do we want to forget Hashem? Hashem is always for us. All he wants to see from us is that loyalty in return. And I know it's hard when there's hurt and there's suffering and there's darkness and there's hostages and there's holocausts and there's pogroms. It's hard. And it's somehow part of Hashem's test. But what we have to hold on to is a faith and a trust that goes beyond our heads, beyond our brains. And we have to just understand we are not here, and everything around us is not here without a God. There is a God. We're still here. It itself is a miracle. We have to hold on to that and hold on to Hashem with everything we have. And with that 100% devotion, Hashem will answer us with 100% devotion, and we will see miracles, great miracles, and we will make it through this last phase of hate, last phase of the evil, wicked energy of annihilating Jews. Not just the bodies, but the souls as well. Our souls and our bodies are going to live through this, thrive, survive, and reach where Hashem's trying to bring us. He's trying to bring us back to that wonderful relationship of Shir Hashirim. You're my beloved, and I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. It's just us and Hashem. Everything else are just props, just extras. Let's get focused, and let's be strong in these last moments that are really testing us, the real test.